D. Crumpton. The 29th of March 2019. I think it was a Friday. I decided to get my old air rifle out of the attic and go and have a practice in the quarry. With it being a Friday, there wouldn't be many people around, unlike the weekends. It was quite a hot day for that time of the year, so I decided to make the most of it. Even though I booked the day off work, I got up early, probably about 8 o'clock. I made myself a full English. Check the usual, online garbage. I'm only 10 to 15 minutes away from Edgeton Quarry, so it was probably getting on for about 10 a.m. It was very quiet, not a soul around. All I could hear was the birds chirping away. I quietly made my way into the crater of the quarry, and to be honest, I was hoping I may just get 1 or 2 wood pigeons. I got to a decent spot with the quarry wall in front of me, so I didn't send a pallet flying through the woods. I had some cover from the thin tall trees that grow out of the bottom of the quarry. I sat still and quiet for 5 or 10 minutes hoping to see a juicy wood pigeon. Now for some reason there was sod all in this part of the quarry, not even the sound of birds. Now just to make things clear, the rifle I had was a Webley FX 2000. It's not the type where you break the barrel and put a pellet in it, it's an air rifle that you pre-charge. It even has a bolt action and a multi-shot circular magazine. It would probably be easier if you just Google the name. I'm only saying all this because it will become more apparent as I tell you what happened. It was probably several months before I last used the gun, so I knew I was going to be a rubbish shot. Like I said, it was very quiet and nobody around, so I decided to just shoot some targets. I looked around to find some oddly colored stones or other bits of rocks that were lying around, then I noticed a very shiny black stone. I thought to myself, that will do the job, and put the rifle to my shoulder and looked through the scope at the shiny stone. At this point my brain wasn't making much sense at what I was seeing. The area behind the shiny black stone was moving slowly up and down. It looked like a goat skin rug that was breathing on its own. Then I realized what it was. The shiny black stone was a nose. Without thinking I said, "Fucking hell." Not very loud, but loud enough for it to hear. Then the shiny black nose that I could see through the rifle scope suddenly had 2 large eyes either side and above it. They were looking straight at me. They were the color of a milky off yellow, a bit like when you see a dog that's old and going a bit blind. But this wasn't blind, it definitely saw me pointing a rifle at it. Then it started to get up off the ground. It was a strange movement. Its back legs got up first and its eyes stayed fixed on me and still. Like its chin was glued to the ground. I just panicked, and like an idiot squeezed the trigger. I couldn't even tell you where the crosshairs were on the animal. I was obviously in shock, but I definitely hit the damn thing. It sprang to all 4s in the blink of an eye. It was that fast that I was now looking through the scope at the gap in its front legs. Well, which I thought was front legs. I moved my chin away from the rifle stock so I could see the whole thing stood there. It looked like an Irish wolfhound, but at least 1.5 or 2 foot taller at its back. The fur on its face was short but getting shaggier around the top of its head, and down its back to its shoulders, a bit like a lion but not as fluffy. Not sure about the ears, I couldn't really see them, but I'm just guessing that they were down because it was angry, but I couldn't be certain. It definitely had the look of an Irish wolfhound. When I was a kid my uncle had one, and he was a gentle giant. That's the closest thing that I could said it looked like. I still had the rifle to my shoulder and I was just staring at it and it was staring back at me. Then it began to burr its teeth just like a dog, and then a sound came from it. It wasn't quite a growl or a bark or hiss, it was like a long slow gargle, but I could feel the sound on my jacket and in my chest. I wasn't even thinking, because of the shock, but my right hand cocked and slid the bolt action of the rifle to load another pellet, and the sound became even more intense. Then like an idiot I squeezed the trigger again. This time there was no reaction whatsoever. Then what felt like minutes but was only a second, it began to walk backwards towards the wall of the quarry. Then I lowered the rifle to my side, and I was just stood there gawping at it. And its backside touched the wall of the quarry, and then it instantly rose to its back legs and spun around. Then it climbed up the walls of the quarry, probably about 40 feet. This thing scaled it in about 2 seconds. That's when I noticed that its front legs looked more like arms and hands. I was viewing this with the naked eye. I never had chance to put the rifle scope back on it, it was just too fast. But to this day I can tell you it had arms and hands. I just stood there while it disappeared out of sight. I know it sounds like a long time, but I can tell you, all this took about 5 seconds. I have kept this quiet for years, but after viewing some of your videos on YouTube, you seem to be no nonsense and just tell me what happened kind of guy, and not full of numbers and statistics. If you have any questions, you can contact me through this email. You can use my second name because there are loads of us in and around Bolton.